Hello and welcome to Runkle of the Bailey. My name is Ian Runkle. I'm a Canadian criminal defense and firearms lawyer. I've been practicing criminal defense for more than a decade now, and in the course of doing that, you see a lot of accounts of people who've been attacked in various ways. And you get to see which people's strategies worked out, like which people were able to fend off attackers, and which people became victims. And that's both through like live testimony, people talk about what they did and if it worked out and what happened to them, as well as video footage. You see all sorts of surveillance cameras and so forth, and so you get to see that. So with that in mind, I thought I would look at a self-defense video. There's lots of them out there on the internet, but just so that we can talk about it and evaluate the advice that it gives. So with that in mind, I'll bring this up. One thing is, whenever I'm talking about these kinds of videos, there's always people in the comments saying, make it bigger. Well, it was filmed in this vertical style. There isn't really a way to make it bigger without losing a lot of what's going on. All right, so let's have a look at what's happening here and we can comment.
Oh, stop!
All right, so she says stop. This is a good place to discuss this. So she's in a car and somebody behind her is using a rope or a cord or something to try to strangle her. And she's going to teach us how to escape that. Now, I sometimes have trouble getting my videos to be long enough, so I thought I could pad this one out by telling you every single account that I've personally dealt with where somebody is being strangled like this. All right, let's begin. So yeah, I've never seen this. I actually did a Google search to see if I could try to find an account of this. I did find a couple of reports of people who found somebody in their back seat. Precisely none of them were armed with a rope or a cord. One of them was unarmed, other than, just being in the back seat and having the advantage of surprise. And the other one had a knife. And none of these strategies work against being stabbed in the neck. Although we'll evaluate how well they work against this whole being strangled thing as well. The next thing I note here is that she's wearing a vest that says police. And so you might be inclined to think, well, she's a police officer. We should take what she has to say very seriously here, right? Because, police officers are well situated to tell us about self-defense strategies. They're trained in, various scenarios. Now, there's a few things that I'll note here. First, that police vest doesn't seem to fit her all that well. Second, when you get a look at the radio that's on her shoulder, it really doesn't seem to be a police issue radio. She's certainly not in a police car. This looks to be an SUV, because a police car would actually have a divider, a panel. In my area, they call it a silent patrolman, to basically protect against people in the back seat, because of course they're transporting, potentially dangerous people. So all of those are subtle hints that maybe she's not a police officer, but we've got a less subtle hint. You see her hand there? We've got this stopped in a nice frame where she's got her hand splayed out. Well, that tells us when we look at those nails that she's really not somebody who's going to be doing a lot of work with her hands. Certainly not, she's not somebody who's expecting to get into potential physical altercations like a police officer. And we can also infer that she's heterosexual. Don't ask me to explain that one, but yeah. I conclude from this that she's not a police officer and not related to the heterosexual aspect, but just related to all of the indicia of, that she's just wearing this vest to try to, pad out her credibility. And that's going to tell us something about just how good the advice is here, because we've already got an honesty problem here. All right. Now, you'll probably also have seen that, this person's applying pressure. She's able to get her hand in there. Now, if somebody's actually trying to strangle you, they're going to be applying a substantial amount of pressure. They're probably going to be leaning their full weight in. They're going to be, potentially bracing against the seat or against your back if they're doing it in person. And that rope would not have that gap. It would be pulled all the way in and dimpling the flesh. This is actually an extremely dangerous situation, because you think of somebody choking you out like this and you're thinking, okay, well, the big danger is that I can't breathe. That's not actually the big issue. The big issue is that that's going to be cutting off the blood flow to your brain. And in fact, you're going to have seconds of consciousness. You're not going to have minutes, you're going to have seconds. So whatever you got to do, it's got to be real fast. And so let's see what her strategy is here. Okay.
If you're ever stuck in a situation like this, see, I cannot get out. I am being held by someone. See this?
She's being held in the most gentle fashion possible by somebody who is clearly not actually trying to cause her harm. So if you're ever in a situation where there's somebody who's got a rope around your neck, but they're also a really good friend of yours who doesn't intend to hurt you, then this might be good advice. If you're actually being attacked, not so much.
I'm going to help you to get out, okay? First things first, take 2 fingers.
You know what? I'm just not. You can think it. We're all thinking it, but moving on.
You're going to put it between the rope and your skin. You want to protect your windpipe. As you can see, this is very, very tight, and I cannot move forward whatsoever, okay?
Very, very tight, but I can get my fingers in between that, and I can bob my head back and forth. Now, if somebody is strangling you like this, you may have damage to your windpipe, and that is a big deal long term. But short term, the real issue is if your blood vessels are being constricted. That's the big thing you got to worry about. So protecting your windpipe here, maybe not the most critical, shortest term kind of issue, but it's what she's going to worry about. All right.
So stop trying to move forward. You're only going to hurt yourself even further, okay? Keep your head backwards. Put your 2 fingers in between the rope and your neck. You want to protect your windpipes. Right away, you're going to get your seatbelt and unbuckle it, okay?
So she's saying protect your windpipe by actually pushing another object in to further compress in the area of your windpipe. In this scenario, like where this guy's got the rope, he's got a knot tied into it. And so far as I can tell, that's because the people making this video couldn't afford one piece of rope. And so they tied 2 together. That is very odd. But I mean, somebody might actually tie a knot in a rope in order to further compress the windpipe. She's doing it for him. That's not great advice here. And now she's going to unbuckle her seatbelt. Okay, let's see where she's going with this.
Okay. Make sure your seatbelt is unbuckled. As you're doing that, you're going to create a very tiny loop with your seatbelt. Okay, see this? With one hand, I create a tiny loop, and I'm going to replace my 2 fingers with the loop of the seatbelt, like so. See this? Okay,
so this, again, assumes that you've got somebody behind you who's not applying tension, so that you've actually got the ability to slide things in there. In the event that you're actually being attacked, you're not going to have any time to do arts and crafts, which is really what she's doing. She's doing a little bit of seatbelt macrame here. This is not what you'd want to be doing in the event of an actual attack.
go ahead and hold it tight. Hold it tight. See how it's very hard to pull forward? So keep your head backwards. Get that 2 finger in there, and with that tiny space, jam that seatbelt in between, okay? So now you are protecting your windpipes right here, okay? So this rope is very...
Yeah, this is not actually offering any protection. Your seatbelt is not body armor, and at this point you are still being choked out. Assuming that the person is actually trying to choke you out. And this is the kind of thing that's very difficult to do a demo of because it can cause serious permanent injury if somebody is trying to do this. But this is the most gentle, kind attacker that you might ever encounter. All right, so she's doing this stupid thing with the seatbelt, a little bit of arts and crafts. Let's see where she goes from here.
Very, very strong, and it's very thin, and it can really hurt your windpipe. So now that you have your seatbelt right there, you can go ahead and do the most important parts, okay? With your other hand, you're going to go ahead and get all the way down where you put your seat back, okay? This is the most important part. This is just to maintain you safe within these couple of seconds.
That's not going to maintain your safety at all. This is what she's selling is not accurate here. Okay, let's keep going.
You're going to go ahead, kick your seat. You're going to go backwards, okay? So really fast. We're going to do it one more time, okay? Ready?
So she's talking about hitting the seat release. Let's watch how this goes.
Okay? I'm going to kick my seat backwards. Now watch how fast this happens. Ready? In 3, 2, 1. Go. Okay, fingers in. Okay, seatbelt comes off. There we go. Loop in. Okay, now with my other hand.
Okay, do that again, but with the guy actually pulling. Like, show me how fast that goes. Where there's actually tension so that you are actually, like, in some danger. Because right now, this is somebody who's not trying to threaten your safety or anything.
I'm going to kick the seat back and I'm going to open the seat. I'm going to open the door, okay? 3, 2, 1. All the way down. I'm out and I can escape.
Now, do you notice that the guy behind her actually lifts the rope to help it get off her neck? Do you think that an attacker would do that, or would the attacker just lean down and continue strangling you? And now you're in a, a lower position, so they're just much more able to get in there and get control. And in fact, now you've opened up that the attacker can, for instance, start applying closed fist strikes to your face that you're not going to be able to really respond to. I don't, you know, this one really relies again on an attacker who is trying to demonstrate that the technique works, as opposed to somebody who's actually trying to hurt you. Somebody who's actually trying to hurt you would be able to react to this to just continue hurting you. So yeah, the other thing, and lots of people have pointed this one out, is that if your seat is has an electric recline, that move of I'm gonna drop the seat back is like a 30-second move, and during that time you will have passed out and died. So not fantastic. All right, let's
Freely, okay? Make sure you learn this. It can.
So she's saying, make sure you learn this. It can save your life. Again, this is defending against the mole people levels of priority in terms of your self-defense planning. But none of what she said there works. And, it assumes that there's somebody with a rope and not a knife. Because, say, if they start out by just giving you a couple of stab wounds to the neck, you're done. There's not a whole lot of real-world practical advice for somebody who attacks you by surprise from behind. Typically, in the actual real world, people tend to lose those fights more often than they win. Especially if you're unarmed. And there's lots of these bits of sort of YouTube or TikTok advice that really are like, hey, you don't need to worry about attackers or, realistic self-defense. I mean, a much better strategy, if she's actually, able to defend herself, might be turn in to try to keep her blood flow, draw a firearm, and shoot the guy repeatedly. That would be an effective strategy, because at that point, his ability to continue strangling is going to be greatly diminished by a few rounds of 9mm to the gut. That tends to be something that that does, in fact, be very effective at stopping an attack. And it's what an actual police officer would be trying to do. Similarly, if she were lowering her seat for the purpose of trying to get an angle to shoot over her head, that might make some sense. I'd expect to see this practiced, in some sort of actual scenario of, somebody who's not being super gentle and trying to help her out of this. But yeah, this is absolutely silly. And this kind of stuff that gets put out there is actively dangerous. When we're telling people first to be worried about scenarios that are just essentially imaginary, all that does is it fills people with fear that is unnecessary and unhelpful. And the next thing is that when we start looking at, at these strategies, if they're ineffective strategies, then all we're doing is we're teaching people to potentially help themselves get killed more easily. I really am not a big fan of all of these things. It just makes no sense to me whatsoever. So, yeah, when I saw this video, it kind of ticked me off, and I thought I would share that with you. Because, yeah, what the heck. In terms of things that actually make for some decent self-protection from when you're in a vehicle, the first thing is, it's very rare that anybody actually hides in your back seat. And think about the reasons for that. Typically, if they're breaking into your car, they're doing so because they don't want you there. They want to get what's in the car, either because they want to rifle through for valuables, or they want to steal the car itself. Typically, if somebody is wanting to attack you, they're not going to go and hide in some random car, because think about it. If they're trying to attack you specifically because, especially because, women, being concerned about being attacked, targeted in that sense, well, then the guy's got to break in when he sees you getting out of the car and then hang out there for however long you're gone. And if you're shopping, that might be a good long while, and maybe you don't come back alone. Can you imagine how awkward it is for this guy if he comes back and you notice him? Because lots of people check their back seats. It's not a common thing, but it can't hurt to check the back seat. And that's just going to be really awkward for Mr. Would-be murderer if it's like, hi, I guess I'm just here hanging out. Can you just pretend you don't see me? It's really not it's not a good vector for attack, right? It doesn't make a whole lot of sense, which is probably why this is super uncommon. Now, this is a popular urban myth. There is sort of the killer in the backseat urban myth. It shows up way more often in movies and so forth than it ever does in actual real life. And, there's a lot more people in real life than there are movies that are made. So really, this indicates that this is something that is incredibly unlikely. Learning this stuff actively detracts from learning useful self-defense tips in terms of things that actually happen and might actually work. So, yeah, I couldn't find the original source for this. I assume it's either on TikTok or, somewhere out there, but I couldn't find the original source. But if you do, let me know in the comments below, because I bet they've got all sorts of other zany BS out there. Anyway, let me know if you enjoyed this. Please, leave a comment. If people sort of found this to be useful, I'll probably do more of these, review more of these sort of weird self-defense things and compare them with my real world experience as a criminal defense lawyer, all of those, sort of accounts that I've seen. And yeah, please like this video, share it with your friends, subscribe to see more content. I also want to thank my Patreon supporters at the $50 level, Canada's National Firearms Association, the CCFR, and the Canadian Shooting Sports Association. At the $30 level, Sights and Arms Limited and Jane Babe and Luxor. And at the $20 level, Mark Haywire, Gerald to the Bailey, Dale Nesbitt, Cameron Johnson, Andrew Elsich, and Vicky. Thank you for watching. I hope this has armed you with knowledge. See you next time.